Welcome to this episode of the Blockchain Files. Today, I'm talking to the founder of Nominis. Nominis is a blockchain intelligence company that uses risk as one of their main levers in order to attribute addresses. Some of their most recent work has highlighted that UK banks unintentionally fund attacks on British bases as a part of the Iran war. Let's dive in.
So my name is Snir. I'm the founder and CEO of Nominis. Nominis is a company that dealing with blockchain intelligence. Specifically, we have a platform for blockchain investigations, risk assessment, transaction screening over the blockchain. We work today with exchanges, law enforcement agencies, PSPs, DeFi platforms, and assisting with understanding the risk of any wallet or transaction. I've entered the crypto space during 2017. I've just started to study about Bitcoin. Actually, I've just did it on my own time. And then during 2020, I've started working literally in the industry. And at the beginning of 2023, I've decided to open Nominis and to focus on intelligence. I always liked OSInt and investigations. And I saw during the time that there is still a big gap in terms of illicit actors and the data that people using for risk screening. Because even those during the time there were a lot of different companies in this space, we could still see that there is a lot of violations of deposits and withdrawals that goes or sent from illicit actors and eventually got accepted in those regulated exchanges. So I felt that there is still a gap in the industry that need to be filed. And yeah, this is how I've decided about Nominis and to focus on the blockchain investigation part.
So you mentioned there about accepted illicit deposits, and I agree. I've seen that in many of my investigations, actually. Even today, it still happens, unfortunately. So you started off working in the industry in 2020. You then struck up Nominis in 2023. What's your journey been like?
Yeah, so I've started as a data scientist in the security department. So I've dealt a lot with fraud detection and studied a lot about how people became victims in some cases, how they got hacked, how their accounts and the credentials got stolen. And then I found that you can really do a good job by helping those people if you build some engines that are able to detect anomalies. So one of the first projects that I had was to build an anomaly detection engine, which was really sophisticated during the time and was able to prevent a lot of cases of people that eventually they were victims, but fortunately their funds weren't stolen. And then I understand, okay, helping and detecting anomalies is just one part, because eventually in order to enhance this or in order to help people after they became a victim will be to build something that's able to trace those funds, and this can assist again in both ways, after they got fraud or before, if you want to build some engines that can assist with making them, flagging them that this is probably a fraud or a scam or some illicit activity. So this is how I started, and this is eventually the basis that Nominis was built on top of.
So you have more of a proactive approach, you're focusing on risk, but also at the same time, you're able to carry out the investigations as and when required.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So Nominis CI working differently today than the vendors in the market. The approach is more about risk prevention. It means that we use a lot of heuristics and a lot of prediction in order to assess if a wallet might be tied to illicit activity. It helps us to uncover and to flag over 10 billion of illicit funds that aren't flagged in any other vendor. Because the idea is that over the last 2 years, we did a huge research about how illicit actors are acting, how they appear on the blockchain, how they interact with other wallets. And based on this, we're able to build an engine that's able to connect the dots and say with high precision that even if the source of funds might be legit in some cases, we know that this is an illicit actor because it is acting in a specific and unique way, in a very distinguished way. And over time, when we started working with law enforcement as well and with private investigators, we got the confirmation about some of those wallets that they're actually linked to illicit actors. And we were able to flag them sometimes 2 years before they even got, they were noticed by law enforcement agencies, and sometimes 2 years before they got frozen. So it's a lot of time before someone else even got physical evidence. And this is only thanks to the approach of heuristics and the anomaly detection that engine that we've built.
You mentioned 10 billion in illicit funds. What does that cover? Does that cover everything? Is it mainly focused on terror? Is it mainly focused on pig butchering? Like, what is it?
That's a great question. So we're active in many fields. Of course, pig butchering is probably the largest problem in the world today in terms of illicit activities. We do this, of course, and we have a huge amount of wallets that link to pig butchering. But one of the main areas that we found that there is a huge gap today is terror financing. Based on previous announcement, we felt that probably the industry is missing some of the actual bad activities that happening by nations, we can say, that utilizing the blockchain for illicit activities. So since October 2023, we've put a lot of effort with our task force to try and connect the dots and find specifically illicit actors that link to terror activities. It always starts in the Middle East, but I can tell you that it expands today to South America, to Venezuela, to the Far East even. So we've started from the Middle East, and then we were able to expand it and connect the dots to other terror financing initiatives that are happening on other continents.
I also want to go back to something else that you mentioned, which was how illicit actors appear on the blockchain, right? And you mentioned that they have a specific and a unique way. Now, I realize that this is, getting into a little bit of your magic ingredient. So, you don't need to give away your secrets here. But at the same time, I think the audience would be curious to know, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So each illicit actor has its own, we can say, own fingerprint. One of the things, by the way, that we have identified recently is that some of those unknown Tron wallets that always appear as the major receiver of USDT, as an example, are actually, the majority of them are instant exchanges, Chinese instant exchanges, and bots, as an example. So we're able to identify that someone pretty much took the same code, the same approach of DeFi, and just created wallets that if you send funds like TRX, native Tron, or USDT, it will act in a specific way and then send you back the conversion. This is one example.
So, like a change now, fix float, wizard swap alternative, right?
Yeah, usually this is laundering. It's less about terror financing, those cases. It's more about laundering and obfuscating the funds. There are also a lot of services that's called Black Queue. This is not a very common term that you'll hear in the Western community, but it's super common in the Far East. Black Queue. Black Queue means black USDT that is probably received from illicit activities like human trafficking, drug trafficking, and etc. And there are a lot of different services that offer today conversion of Black Queue for clean U. They do it via exchanges sometimes. They do it via obfuscation of the source of funds. So all those type of entities, those instant exchanges and also those Black Queue cleaning machines, they have some very unique and distinct fingerprint over the blockchain. And when you understand how to find those fingerprints, you're able to work in scale and to uncover more wallets, even if you don't have any OSInt. You can start from OSInt to get the first understanding of what is this wallet. And when you have 1, 2, 3 wallets that you can link to OSInt and say, okay, this is a illicit actor that do ABC, you're able to build a profile. And based on this profile, Nominis platform able to find in scale other wallets. And then even if we don't have OSInt for other wallets, and even if the source of funds might be legit, we're still able to tell you this is probably a wallet that belongs to an entity that do ABC and illicit actions like this one. And yeah, this is what we've built. And this is a completely different approach with the way that the current industry, the crypto industry and blockchain intelligence industry is working.
Where you mentioned like these fingerprints that come around, clearly on the blockchain, you have the option to have smart contracts, right? But I assume that that's not the case here. I assume that you don't see smart contracts, right? And the reason I say this is because this is one of the biggest areas I think investigators fail, is because they blindly follow the transaction, the assets more specifically, even if a particular address is exhibiting behaviors that replicate something similar to a service, right? They won't recognize that. It's not labeled in, some of these free to use tools like Arkham and things. And so they'll just follow the USDT through the wallets, even though the exchange, the ownership of those assets have changed, right? So I see, typically you'd see it like a smart contract if there's a service, but even in Change Now, right, you will see that there's no smart contracts involved. It's all built in their own centralized infrastructure, right, which you don't have access to. So when you're talking about fingerprints there, are you talking about the specific incoming and outgoing transactions, when they happen, how they happen? What does like the deposit address look like before, like a hot wallet type address? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's absolutely part of the rules that we have. And one more important stuff to mention about illicit actors, they're trying not to use anything that is not controlled by them. You touched a very good point. Eventually, for them, DeFi protocol in some cases, especially when we're talking about the Tron blockchain, which 90% of the illicit activity is happening on this specific blockchain, there are not a lot of DeFi protocols. There are some, but not a lot. And it's not as common as the Ethereum blockchain, as an example. And in the Tron blockchain specifically, you see that illicit actors are usually utilizing their own techniques. So either by moving the funds in many different wallets, or two wallets that act as a mixing service without any smart contract, or using a lot of different Telegram bots. This is also something that emerging over the last.
Of course, yeah,
over
that's
the last
definitely a vector, yeah. Because if you think about it, we have, there's a lot of trading bots out there, right? Just that retail can use. You think about, there's Banana Bot, I think there's Maestro Bot, there's all sorts of different bots operated fully out of Telegram, right? And so if that's the case, well, Telegram, you can program automation there, you can give it private keys and, code everything up. Therefore, you can build an infrastructure which isn't easily recognized on the blockchain. Yeah, so
that's the idea. That's exactly the idea. They built the DeFi outside of the blockchain by utilizing traditional code methods and Telegram in order to do trading. So exactly like you've mentioned, they don't need a smart contract. They have a Telegram bot that's able to handle everything, while on the back end, it has the private keys, and it has the mechanism to build and understand who sent funds and to which deposit address, and to deal with it. That's exactly the idea.
So as you know, there's just no way that this can be stopped. But maybe you can get a channel shut down or whatever. But 10 more will pop up, right? It's like that. And it's the same. I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day. It's exactly the same with scams, right? You shut one scam down, 10 more will appear. It's just crazy, the scale of these things. In your approach with Nominis, you know that you're not going to be able to stop everything. So your approach, therefore, then is to share as much data with your client about risk, okay? Because and I assume that the reason why that's important is because whilst it might not be 100% accurate, what you are doing is you're sharing much more of the picture.
Absolutely. We understand that data eventually is gold, and any data that you can find. So instead of just taking a look at the on-chain, we've combined the off-chain, which is the social media and the dark web, and open web and illicit forums and leak databases, and we combine everything together so we can build a profile for any wallet. Now, you've mentioned something super important. For every wallet or exchange that you uncover, there are 10 more. This is why everything that we do, we try to minimize the manual effort by the team. So every time that we recognize a pattern or a specific way to identify a wallet or illicit actor, we have our data scientists and we have our software developers, which trying to build an automated mechanism. That's exactly the approach. One of the things that we've built recently is the ability to collect data in scale and to connect it to individuals. This is one thing. Another thing is the ability to collect data from all over the world and all over the web. And dissolve, as an example, QR codes and pictures, and based on this, to find wallets and connect them to real-world entities. And this is all in a very automated way. Today, we have over 250,000 new attribution every day that is fully automated. This is 99.9% of the attribution in the platform, pretty much done automatically by the platform, by the different engines that we've built. And we're constantly working to build more and more engines and AI engines that are able to understand context and to automatically map stuff very fast. And based on this, to be able to identify in 1-2 hours maximum, since something was appeared somewhere on the clear web or dark web or social media, we want to map it automatically and to allow the platform to be updated. This is how you do compliance.
So the exchanges, what they may see coming in is a deposit. And you were talking about, illicit deposits earlier. Well, at least in 2023, when you started up Nominis, there was accepted illicit deposits, which actually don't take that much work, even for someone without a platform to figure out that they're illicit. So they had some form of risk tolerance. So with what's different for the exchange from their perspective?
Yeah, one of the things that we understood when we started the company, we started as an API-driven company. Why? Because we understood that there is a huge gap today between manual investigations and API. The manual investigation usually have a lot of context, in comparison to the API. You have data about the entity, you have data about the incoming, the outgoing, the indirect exposure, etc. But usually when you're moving to the API and start working in scale, this is pretty much very poor API. It's pretty much Boolean in many of those cases. Like you get the risk score, or you get sometimes this is risky or not because it's gambling or illicit actors or human trafficking and etc. And that's it, like zero context in some cases. So what we've did is to create an API, which is literally the most comprehensive API in the industry, by far from any other vendor. It allows you to basically, when you screen a wallet or a transaction, you get the entire money trail, you get the OSInt, you get the activity timeline, you get a lot of stuff. So it's not just a Boolean thing. You can literally take this entire data, which can be even few megabytes if the wallet is really big. And if you want to have any additional analysis on your side before you send it for further examination by the compliance team, you're able to do this with your own engines. But the idea is that we give a lot of context, we give explanation, we give description, We summarize with AI everything, and it also not just on the UI, but also via the API. And this is a different approach that allows you to conduct investigations in scale. You don't need to move any Boolean flagged wallet that you got into the compliance team. You now have a huge context about any wallet that got flagged.
I want to go back to something you mentioned about Telegram channels and things like this. And I'm going back with a story. So I think it was like 18 months ago. We was approached by the Chinese law. It was a law enforcement agency out in China somewhere. I don't recall which province, but they requested some help, and it was to identify a particular address, right? I think it was a Bitcoin address or something like that. So I did a load of work on the open internet. There wasn't that much to find at all. It wasn't until I went into Telegram that I came across this address, right? Now, in that Telegram channel, it was Mandarin, Chinese. I couldn't understand it. At the time, we didn't have such great translation tools like we have these days. But there was also QR codes in there. So from my memory, there was a load of posts that were being made, lots of images, but a lot of information was actually on the images, which is not necessarily searchable by the index, right, of Google or what have you. And some of those was QR codes, which actually were Bitcoin addresses or what have you, right? So I went back to the law enforcement agency and I said, okay, wasn't able to find much, but here is what I was able to find in this channel. It was a public channel, so you can go in and take a look. And they actually got back to me, which is actually quite rare, because law enforcement, once they have the information that they need, it's very rare that you get information back, actually. It depends on the relationship, I guess. But in this case, they did get back to me, and they highlighted that it was a part of a large illegal gambling operation being operated out of China. Yeah. So I just wanted to go back and share that story, but also ask the question: does Nominis look at those things? Because you mentioned QR codes as well. So QR codes and Telegram, it came together. Oh, it sparked that story in my mind. Is that something that's automated these days, or like? Because that's pretty cool if it is.
Yeah. So you've exactly touched the point. The idea is that we have two different mechanisms. One mechanism is that when you screen a wallet, we go in real time and try to collect data. But, and this is a super important one, but before that, our engine's constantly working, scraping and extracting data from different sources and already feeding our platform. So once you ask about the specific wallets, hopefully we'll already have the data about it. And yeah, we're able to take images, we're able to take QR codes. And even before you asked about them, we dissolve them, we get the information, and we connect them to the entities. That's exactly the idea. And this is how we work in scale. And again, when you screen for a specific wallet, we also do make active some of the engines to try and find you even more information than what we already have in the database.
So scrape and collect each day, but when there's a need, you can essentially push a button and then it's going to go scrape specifically for a particular wallet. Okay.
Exactly. Now, in order to build, by the way, such a system, you need, the first thing is to find the right keywords. When you have the right keywords and you have the right wallet, the right channel, you can do this. But a lot of these tasks is about finding the context that will give you the best and the optimized content that you want, and to reduce the noise, because we're talking about a huge amount of data.
Yeah.
So it's a lot about try and mistake until you find the right combination of words that will give you the best data.
During the journey of Nominis and the work that you've done with exchanges and law enforcement, do you have a story or a narrative that you can share where Nominis had an impact and you can talk about some of the details openly?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I've mentioned in the past, we do a lot of prediction. We do profiling to wallets, and based on this, we assign, we score an attribution to different wallets that no one in the world knows about them and can attribute them. That's the idea. And we have multiple cases when we flagged wallets as illicit actors during 2023, wallets that moved tens of millions of dollars into terror organization, into criminal groups. And in 2023, we flagged them because based on the profiling that we've built for such entities like terror financing and criminal groups, we understood that there are thousands of different wallets out there that were never flagged by anyone else, and that actually seems with high probability to be linked to the same network. So we flagged those wallets during 2023. And then over 2025, we had multiple cases when we got a call from different type of clients that just told us that they have additional info about wallets, and now they appeared on some of their investigations, they appeared on some of their clients, and they want to understand how we were able to know, because no one knew about it, and how we were able to flag this 2 years ago when no one knew that those wallets are part of this network. And those are exactly the places when we feel that the approach that we bring to the table about profiling and finding similarities in wallets, those are exactly the places where we feel that it's working. And we have multiple cases of such things that we knew before. And then in some of the investigations of our clients, they reached out and said, wow, this is actually a wallet that I've just recently found out that linked to terror organization, and you knew about it like 2 years ago. And then we're able to enhance the data that they have and to complete the entire story about this wallet and how we flag it and why we thought about it. And it helped with a lot of investigations and seizing procedures.
You mentioned earlier about pig butchering being one of the biggest areas of illicit crime. How big is pig butchering? Like, what are you seeing?
So the estimation today is that pig butchering is a $1 billion industry, like every year. The problem again with pig butchering is that there are a lot of different wallets and organizations that dealing with it, and this is not something that's easy to detect. One of the ways that we do today is we are using a lot of OSInt to find hints about wallets that link to pig butchering. And once we have this wallet and we conduct the risk screening, we're able to find similarities. And if we do able to find similarities to other cases, then we're able to flag. Now, I can tell you that we have a team that's working specifically on finding such cases. The amounts are huge. In some weeks, our team was able to find over 1 billion wallets that facilitated over 1 billion in USDT over the years that are tied to such a big butchering. So it really depends, but the amounts are really huge. And again, everyone that deals with the Tron blockchain will notice that it's different. Usually, when you're taking a look at Ethereum, Bitcoin, other blockchains, when you take a look at the 100 wallets that received funds, like the top 100 wallets that just received funds, you'll find that around 80–90% of them are attributed to exchanges or DeFi protocols. In the Tron blockchain, if you'll take a look at the top 100 wallets, you'll see that few tens of percentage are linked to exchanges, and usually the rest are just unnamed services and OTC desks and etc. This is very different than any other blockchain. In the majority of the cases, those are exactly the places or the wallets that link to those illicit actors. Because like we've mentioned before, the Tron blockchain is getting used today by a lot of different illicit actors, the pig butchering and etc. It's mainly on Tron, USDT, and the amounts are 10–15 times more than any other blockchain.
Why Tron, though?
Why Tron? Some analyses stated that the Tron is probably the most active blockchain today in terms of users and wallets. So this is a good place that you can hide. Also, I can tell you from previous experience that many illicit actors specifically guiding their users to use the Tron blockchain if they want more anonymity. One of the things that you can find in the leaks, the database leak of Nobitex, as an example, the biggest Iranian exchange, is they told their clients to use Tron to get extra privacy. So we believe that other illicit actors doing the same thing and guiding their people or their users to mainly use the Tron blockchain. It's easy, it's fast, it's cheap, it's overcrowded, and it has USDT in this case. So it's a perfect candidate for moving funds. It's also supported by the majority of the exchanges and OTC desks today. So it's the best candidate today for doing such activities.
Right. Attribution as a whole doesn't seem to be as ingrained onto the Tron blockchain.
That's a great observation. You're completely right. There is a huge lack today in the industry about Tron attribution. This is one of the blockchain that has many cases of lack of attribution. However, we see, and also my own opinion is that the world is going into more and more stable coins adoption. And as part of the stablecoin adoptions, they will use less Bitcoin and more blockchains that are focused on stablecoins. Tron today is heavily focused on stablecoins and USDT. Of course, there are other blockchain like the Tron blockchain by the Telegram group. This is also a blockchain that are getting used today a lot by Iranian exchanges, as an example. We see that it was already started to be migration from the Tron blockchain into the Ton blockchain by some actors that want to get more privacy, cheaper transactions in some cases. Because, like you've mentioned, Tron, even though it has a lack of attribution, today companies putting more focus on it, especially as it's widely adopted all around the world.
And you also mentioned that these bad actors use USDT, and I see it all the time. If I see some bad actors going onto the Tron blockchain, they always use USDT. Now, USDT and Tether, traditionally, whilst obviously there can be delays in them acting if they've got the right evidence and things, but they seem to be a little bit quicker than Circle. I know some people have had some complaints there about Circle. Or what's your thoughts on how much of a role companies like Tether can have, armed with a tool like Nominis that allows them to see these illicit transactions on the Tron blockchain?
Yeah, this is a delicate game between freezing user wallets and making user comfortable using the blockchain. Like they're pretty much in contradiction between what they want to do in the commercial side, mass adoption of USDT, and compliance is bad for this. Just as simple as that. The more frozen wallets, the more intervention of Tether in the USDT wallet, the less people that will use USDT. So like I mentioned, this is always a delicate game between doing the right thing and still making people understand that they can trust and move USDT. So today, in my opinion, if we want to stop illicit actors, we can't rely on the native companies themselves. It won't work in this case. We need more intervention by law enforcement agencies and task forces that will be able to act fast and notify those companies, those stablecoin issuers. This is the only way. Otherwise, we will always be behind those illicit actors or just moving money in a very fast way, utilizing a lot of different wallets. And if you need, to give a subpoena or to ask for a freeze, and it will take a few days. It's usually too slow for this. The money is already gone. We need a more faster mechanism that will allow freezing funds.
Yeah, we do. There's something missing there. I know there's a couple of organizations looking at how to make that more streamlined, to be honest with you. And, how can we provide a much more accurate picture to law enforcement so that they can request these freezers and out to, the tether and companies alike. But it is difficult. I do appreciate that. Yeah. I just want to ask something that just crossed my mind. It was talking about pig butchering and first of all, the scale of it. Why do you think it's so big?
From the previous articles that you see and the images which we were able to identify and the context on the Telegram, this is a business eventually. If you saw Squid Game as an example, some people think it's not real. But when you investigate cases on the blockchain and you're part of the crypto industry, and also not part of the crypto industry, but in general, when you deal with human trafficking, you understand that it's not far from reality. There are camps that some people that owe money are getting used as slaves. And this is what they do. They're just sitting all day and they need to bring results. They need to scam people. This is
and they have no choice.
They have no choice.
Yeah, there was an article from The Guardian from February that, talks about the freed scam compound workers and their perspective on the abuse that happened. These aren't people going in for a day-to-day job. This is people who are being potentially human trafficked or forced into labor on these phone farms that allows them to reach many, many victims. It's quite scary when you think about it.
It is, but this is exactly the problem. Like I've mentioned, this is a big industry. The fraud industry isn't new. Crypto is just one way eventually to do this. But people got, defrauded every day. Crypto is one way, and those human trafficking camps, fraud is a very profitable industry. Yeah, that's the case. So of course, pig butchering will be very successful and in a very large scale, because you see some elderly people, you can see some naive people, they got a phone call, they got an email, and they believe, and we can't blame them. Yeah, the only way. Yeah, human psychology. It's easy to be a victim in such case. And by the way, there should be, in my opinion, two tracks. First, of course, is to shut down and find those illicit actors. But it all starts with education. Education at school, education to elderly people. It starts with this. And this is something, in my opinion, that law enforcement agencies and countries should be, this should be mandatory. Because this is like you do physical security, you need to do also financial security and to teach people how to stay away from frauds. Because this is sometimes worse than someone who just became a victim and lost all these funds. It can be even terrible sometimes than getting shot. Yeah,
in terms of the overall impact, not just
the overall impact.
Yeah, the emotional impact, the damage to the family. There's so many impacts that are not necessarily thought of initially. Yeah,
exactly. And it all starts with education. Like, people know that they shouldn't talk with strangers. You tell it to your children, but you're not doing the same with elderly people. You're not teaching them. You should avoid. You're not giving your social security number. You're not giving your bank account. You're not giving your password. There is no large scale of education that do this today.
Yeah, completely true. Yeah, I think there's some small pockets where people are trying, but it needs to be much bigger than that. there was a thought that came across my mind. We've been talking about pig butchering, been talking about terror, financing, and things like that. Are they linked in some cases?
That's a great question. One of our investigation about funds that received by probably a terror activists that received funds from the IRGC and the Houthis regime. Some of those funds were moved from some sort of mixer that also linked to the JPACs, to the case in Japan about the Japanese exchange and the money laundering. So yeah, the answer is definitely that they are linked. So I'm not sure it was Japanese, probably in Hong Kong. But definitely illicit actors are interacting with illicit actors. This is something that we see. In many cases, the infrastructures are pretty much the same. They utilize the same wallets, the same actors to conduct the operations. I can also tell you from previous experience that we see a lot of terror organization that utilizing highly sophisticated people from China and from other places and Venezuela and South America to help them with money laundering, even though they're completely unrelated to their business. They use their expertise in order to do this. And those people can serve a lot of different type of organizations, from criminal organizations in one part of the world and terror organization on the other part of the world.
So from a laundering perspective, yes, they're linked in terms of they may use the same infrastructures and things like that. And again, you won't see the smart contracts on chain. All you'll see is patterns if you look closely enough. But what about, like, we know that, for example, North Korea has a government-funded, essentially a hacking organization, right? We call them DPRK. There's a few different names for them. And so, the hacking and the social engineering that goes into it is the vehicle that's used to raise funds for the state, right?
Yep.
So looking at, pig butchering and terrorism, I'm also wondering if is pig butchering and romance scams, are there, have you seen it where they are used as a vehicle to extract money to then fund terrorist financing? Or are they two very different things now in terms of
usually
being used?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I can tell you that the two, in terms of terror financing, the methods are different. It's usually it can be either financial aid, like campaigns to raise funds. This is one example. Second example is drug trafficking. We know that a lot of drug trafficking, and not just drug, but also minerals trafficking. Super interesting, yeah. But we know today that a lot of sanctioned countries and sanctioned terror organization, they use a lot of, they sell minerals and resources, and they utilize cryptocurrencies to move those funds eventually, so they got funded. So the fastest thing that they do is financial aid, like campaigns, but usually the scale of raising funds via those campaigns are not big. The second thing that they do is using the cryptocurrencies to sell some of their resources, if it's oil, if it's gold, and other stuff, and getting the procedures from this deal via cryptocurrencies. Those are usually the main methods to fund today terror organizations.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So there may be some financial campaigns that, but yeah, you're right, that each one of those will take quite a bit of effort. They'll require setup, they'll require infrastructure, they'll require people to go and execute that, which, yeah, they obviously do. Maybe not to the extent of romance scams, because sometimes they can take weeks and months to gain the trust of somebody and to to then earn, say, $5,000, maybe in some cases. So, you know, perhaps it doesn't scale up very well there. But yeah, in terms of sales of resources and things, makes complete sense. Snir, I could talk about this all day, but I'm conscious, you know, we've been talking for almost an hour, and it's been absolutely fascinating, and I hope to get to do this again. But I want to make sure that you can go away and do what you need to do as well. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, and ask if there's any sort of final words, any final messages that you'd like to share before we close out the session.
Yeah, first, of course, thank you very much. I really hope that people enjoyed and got educated from this session. I know that not a lot of people talking about the things that we've just mentioned today. Yeah, pig butchering, yeah, pretty much a lot of companies, but everything about terror financing and stuff like this, this is somehow stays behind the titles. We're always help to collaborate and assist people with those matters, anyone that have questions. And I hope again that eventually companies will put more effort on finding illicit actors, than just doing some intelligence in scale, because we feel today that the industry is pretty much trying to uncover legal entities mainly, but not putting a lot of effort on the illicit actor side, and find them. So I hope that eventually pig butchering as well will be something that we'll start to see decline. For now we see a lot of things that the numbers are growing up every year. And again, I hope that both taking measures like stopping those illicit actors on the blockchain, but also education will be fruitful and will allow people to be more safe.